I would like to share my deep concerns for this region, the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, not just as the Director General of the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, but also as someone from the region and as someone living in the mountains. Actually, I come from Bhutan and my village is right in the mountains, and I grew up looking at mountains and enjoying the benefits and services from mountains. Now, our region, the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, is known to the outside world as the third pole. It's also known as the water towers of Asia. That is because 10 of Asia's, I would say, largest rivers originate from this region. And these rivers actually provide the source of livelihoods to over 1.9 billion people living both within the mountains and hills as well as living downstream in the downstream areas. So it is a global asset. It is a source of so many ecosystem services, particularly water. But then you cannot discount the other services that the mountains provide. The biodiversity, if you like, the genetic resources, the recreational dimensions of the mountains, the spiritual dimensions. You will agree with me that many sages, many wise people have found inspiration and wisdom from the mountains. So it goes beyond the physical assets. The spiritual assets of the mountains should not be discounted. The Hindu Kush Himalayan region is often referred to as the third pole because it has the largest reserve of ice outside the two poles. It's also known as the water towers of Asia because they provide livelihood to over 1.9 billion people. Some 240 million people live in the mountains and hills of the region, and another 1.6 billion live in the downstream areas. The ecosystem services that the mountain region provides is critical to the livelihoods of over, in our estimate, around 1/3 of the world's population. The Hindu Kush Himalayan region is also home to 4 of 36 global hotspots of biodiversity. Now, this biodiversity is so very important, not only in terms of providing genetic resources for food, also for medicines and other uses. The Hindu Kush Himalayas is also a home to a mosaic of ethnic groups, cultures and traditions. The mountains themselves are referred to as sacred sites. So if you take the value of mountains as a whole, it goes beyond just the physical benefits it brings. There are so many dimensions, and as I mentioned, the value that it provides as a source of inspiration cannot be undermined. I think it is contributing to the overall well-being of societies. Okay, I'll stop here on that second part. The Hindu Kush Himalayan region is also home to a mosaic of ethnic groups, cultures and traditions. We all know that the mountains have inspired thousands and thousands throughout the ages. So many sages and seers from within and outside the region have come seeking. Sad to say, everything that we are talking about mountains, everything that I mentioned earlier is now under serious threat because of climate change and because of other socio-economic drivers. Because we are at the top of the world, we experience everything fast, including climate change impacts. And this impact is manifested in many ways. Our glaciers are melting very fast. The snow cover is decreasing, snow line is retreating. Floods are increasing both in frequency and intensity. Disasters in many forms and shapes brought about by unpredictable weather is also increasing. Unfortunately, everything that I mentioned earlier, the goods and services that mountains provide, the value that mountains represent, are all under threat now. climate change is impacting us more than anywhere else. Because we are at the top of the mountain, we experience the impacts of climate change also earlier than maybe any other regions in the world. Unfortunately, this is all under threat now. According to a scientific assessment that we have conducted, even a 1.5 degrees Celsius world is going to be too hot for this region. Our glaciers are melting very fast, our snow cover is decreasing, and the snowfall events are also decreasing. So we cannot see those snowy peaks anymore from, if you compare to the early days when we were children, we used to see mountain peaks all around our valley. But now we hardly see them. Even if you see them, it's just for a few days. Whereas in the past, you used to see them for months. Unfortunately, these are all under threat now. According to a scientific assessment that we made, even a 1.5 degrees Celsius world will be too hot for the HKH region. If we do not do anything, it will be worse. Then it is estimated that 2/3 of our glaciers will be gone by the end of the century. Now, this is not just glaciers melting. It is about livelihoods for those millions of people living both within and outside the region. The other dimension, while the glacier lakes feed the rivers that bring benefits to so many millions, it also brings disasters along with it in the form of glacial lake outburst floods and other events like floods triggered by landslides and rock slides, as the one we recently experienced in Uttar Pradesh. I think just a day ago, yesterday, there was another rock slide event in Himachal Pradesh. So these events are recurring, and as we, in the years ahead, it will go on increasing. So on the one hand, we receive the boon from the mountains. On the other hand, the mountains can also be a source of disasters. Now, our region needs to come together, as they have rightly done so in establishing ICIMOD, and coming together to discuss not only the problems but also solutions. Recently, in fact last year, our regional member countries have come together to commit to taking actions on this climate change. So the mountains not only provide sustenance and livelihoods to millions, but could also cause loss of lives and property, as we have seen many times. That is why we tend to call this region as the pulse of the planet. What happens here has implications across the globe. So there are compelling reasons why the regional member countries of our HKH region have to work together. There are so many things that they can do on their own to address climate change impacts. But there are several things that we can do better together as a region. Now, our countries have recognized that, and they have come together in October last year to commit to taking immediate actions, to cooperate, to address some of these very, very urgent and important challenges. For example, air pollution is something that we can solve better as a region if we come together. It's a transboundary issue because the dust particles or black carbon that are emitted from one country doesn't stop at the within the airspace of that country. They drift across and eventually gets deposited on the ice and snow bodies on the top of the mountains. and this in turn causes the rapid melting of ice and snow, which in turn of course causes floods and disasters downstream. Therefore, this requires a regional solution, and we need to address both the causes as well as the impacts. Now here is where we can cooperate in the form of technology transfer into transforming and adopting technologies that are less polluting. So this is already happening, and we are happy that we are already working on transforming the energy sector, in transforming the industries into less polluting ones. For example, the brick kiln industry that is very important for countries like Nepal, Pakistan and India. There is a new technology that is being promoted. And ICIMOD has been working with our partners in the member countries on switching over to this technology that reduces the greenhouse gas emissions. This is just one example. Now another example is in the area of disaster risk reduction. Is the need for collaboration in disaster risk reduction. As you know, floods also know no national boundaries. So if you want to reduce loss of lives and property, then we need to cooperate in terms of exchanging information, in terms of exchanging knowledge and good practices. If we don't do that, if we do not have early warning systems in place, if we do not have information flowing from upstream countries to downstream countries, this is going to cause lots of life. So early warning systems, advanced warning system, disaster response mechanisms all need regional collaboration. If we don't have that, this is going to result in huge loss of lives and property. Regional cooperation is also very important to expand the economic opportunities in the region. For example, tourism. Tourism is going to be one very, very important economic sector, and we will gain so much by working together on this. For example, a tourist coming from Europe to Kathmandu would easily fly over to Thimphu or to Dhaka or to Islamabad or Delhi instead of having to go back and come back all the way. It makes economic sense for the tourists as well as for us. If we work together and develop packages along these lines, all the countries stand to benefit. Let me also give a practical example on how we can capitalize on tourism. Lumbini in Nepal is the birthplace of Lord Buddha. Now we have sacred sites, Buddhist sites all across the region. If we can link all these places of religious significance, connected to Lord Buddha, connected to his teachings, connected to his disciples, I think there would be a huge interest both from tourists from outside the region as well as from within the region. Now, in fact, I would say we will have many tourists from within the region looking for an opportunity to visit all these sites. But this can only happen if you work together. So to address the many challenges that our regional member countries are facing, we need to embrace, we need to come together to pursue a green, resilient and inclusive development agenda.